So, the original Lord, the Supreme Lord of everything, he who is called God, the Supreme Lord, Creator, the Maintainer, appeared in Navadvip, West Bengal, a little over 500 years ago as Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is, of course, the Lord in the mood of Radharani, the Lord in the mood of compassion personified, and his first expansion, Balaram, appeared with him as Lord Nityananda. So when the Lord appears, he appears with his potencies. They may be displayed or hidden. Just like in the state of Lord Vraja, when Lord Vraja appeared, we didn't see all of his potencies. Of course, the earth is there as his Shakti, but we didn't see all of his expansions, like Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. We didn't see all of them, but they're there. In this case of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his first expansion, Balaram, appears as Lord Nityananda. And Sankarshan, Seshanaga, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karna ocean, they're all Nityananda's plenary portions and portions of his plenary portions. This is the Creator, the Lord in the mood of the Creator. And all of these manifestations of the Lord as Creator are expanded from Balaram, from Lord Nityananda. Of course, ultimately, you could say they're expansions from Krishna. They're expansions from Krishna through the expansion of Lord Nityananda. Now, it's very important to understand it's not that there are many gods, although each of these expansions even the liberated soul can expand, be in more than one place, with more than one relationship with Krishna, more than one mood. Just like we have many jivas who are in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and simultaneously in Krishna's pastimes, and some of them are simultaneously in Lord Ramchandra's pastimes. Some of them are simultaneously in Lord Singhadeva's pastimes, and so forth. And in each of these pastimes, the devotees can be in a different mood. So a devotee may be in the Madhurya mood with Krishna and the Dasya mood with Lord Chaitanya. And they're experiencing these things simultaneously. So if that's true for the little part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, how much more so is it true for the Lord? Advaitam achyutam anadim ananta rupam, ananta without end, rupam form. So this can mean that the Lord's own form is without end, just like when Mother Yasoda bound baby Krishna, she couldn't find an end to his form. She was trying to put a rope around him, and the rope kept being just slightly too short, no matter how many ropes she put together. So he has an endless form. Or when Arjuna saw the universal form, unlimited eyes, unlimited hands, unlimited mouths. But Anantarupam also means that the Lord has unlimited forms, not just that he has one form that is unlimited, but he has unlimited forms. Yet he is still the same Supreme Lord, still the same Supreme One. It's not that he's a different person, but he's displaying different aspects. Of course, as Krishna, Akila Rasamrita Murti, everything is included in Krishna. And the different expansions, they're something they're not displaying. So the main difference between Krishna and Balaram is that Balaram has the mood of service towards Krishna. Krishna is both the Omega Tapasam. Of course, Krishna also serves Balaram. We find Krishna massaging Balaram's feet and so forth. Krishna serves all of his devotees, even all of the jivas. But still, we can say that Balaram, Lord Nityananda, Advaita Charya, they're in the mood of the servants, even though they are also Vishnu Tattva. So we're going to go now to a meditation on the song that we sang just a few minutes ago, Pada Kamala. We're going to be meditating on Srila Prabhupada singing this song and trying to enter into a mood of taking shelter of Lord Nityananda. in this particular line, Narottama Das Thakur is saying that the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, and generally in the Shastra, the Acharyas, the feet of the Lord are referred to as lotuses. Yesterday I was teaching one of my grandchildren about similes and metaphors. So this, of course, is a metaphor. Someone needs to mute their mic because they're sniffling and typing. So this is a metaphor. It's not that the Lord's feet are literally lotuses. They are as beautiful as a lotus. They are as fragrant as a lotus. They are soft as a lotus, softer, of course, more beautiful, more fragrant. Generally, a material body, even if you have very beautiful feet, some people have very beautiful feet, and they are foot models. The people take pictures of their feet to advertise different things. In order to keep their feet like that, they have to not walk very much and put lots of lotion and stuff on their feet. For most of us, our feet are not such an attractive part of our body. They become hard and calloused and cracked and so forth. For many people, their feet sweat and smell bad. So our feet are generally hard. I know one devotee, a good friend of mine, who when she was in India, never wore shoes anywhere. And her feet got so calloused that when she would walk on a hard floor, they would make noise like shoes. And so our feet generally, they don't get that hard, but our feet are generally hard and smelly, not a particularly beautiful part of the body. You may think of beautiful parts of the body. You think of the shoulders and the face, the eyes, the nose, the hair, and so forth, sometimes the hands. But with the Lord, every part of his body, angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti, pasyanti panti kalayanti chiram juganti. Every part of his body, of course this is true for the liberated jivas in their spiritual body also, can perform the functions of any other part of the body. And every part of the body of the Lord, every part of the form of the Lord is perfect. There's no part and whole differentiation with the transcendental body. The part is the whole is the part. There's not this kind of duality. So when we take shelter of the feet of Lord Nityananda, this also implies humbling of oneself. To fall at someone's feet is a very humbling physical gesture, not something that's done much in the Western world. And generally in the Western world, people do not literally fall at the feet of somebody else. However, it's a very common practice in India and the other Eastern cultures that when you show respect, you quite literally take your body and you put it down at the person's feet. You may even touch their feet. Such behavior is considered very odd in the West and perhaps even degrading to the person who's bowing down. We so much in the West value our independence and our false ego, perhaps. But this is a sign of total submission. Just like when we offer obeisances, we can offer just pranams, where one folds one's hands and remains upright. We can offer 5-pointed obeisances, where we get down on our forearms and our shins, our knees. And we can offer full 8-pointed dandavats, where we fall down completely like a rod, and each is a progressive indicator of surrender. But when we surrender to someone in this world, it's usually not very pleasing. Generally, when you surrender to someone in this world, they exploit you in some way, they use you in some way. You could expect perhaps that they would kick you. But Lord Nityananda, when one falls at his feet, one feels like there's millions of moons. So at the end of a hard day of work, we see the beautiful moonlight. Of course, my grandson, who wants to be an astronomer, he doesn't like the moonlight. He calls the moon light pollution because then he can't see all the stars. But for most of us, the moon is very pleasing. I took a walk early this morning. There was no moon, just so many stars in the sky here in Hawaii. There you see an amazing amount of stars. I didn't see the moon. I missed the moon. Where is the moon? The Lord Nityananda's lotus feet are like millions and millions of moons. And while the sun is certainly very welcome, the moon is very soothing. The moon has a cooling effect. It gives us a sense of relief from the burning fire of material life. And Krishna explains this fire of material life. It's basically made up of our own lust to want to enjoy separately from Krishna, which is an absurd situation if one thinks about it reasonably. But because we want to try to enjoy separately, we think we are going to be fulfilled if we get out of balance and we get disconnected and we get separated and we put ourselves at the center. And how ridiculous that sounds when one says it, but that is how we are thinking. Then we end up, instead of in cooling millions of moons, we end up in a blazing fire. And it's a fire that's never satisfied. When one pours the fuel of material enjoyment, amassing material objects, amassing fame, relationships, sense enjoyment, whether good food and pleasant music, sexual enjoyment, that no matter how much of this we pour on this fire, the fire is still blazing. It's like we're pouring fuel on a fire. And when you put fuel on a fire, the fire goes down for a moment and then it blazes up again. And we don't, no one says, well, now I've eaten a good meal and now I have no desire for tasty food anymore. Now the desire is finished, but it blazes up again. And of course, in this picture, we see how Krishna says this lust is covering the living entity like an embryo in the womb, dirt on a mirror or smoke on the fire. And the embryo in the womb is compared to when one has a body of a plant. The covering is very thick, the covering over one's consciousness. The dirt on the mirror like an animal, a little less thick. You do see animals sometimes show some compassion and affection. You don't see that much with plant. And in the human, less covering, like smoke on a fire. It's only in the human life that, generally speaking, that one inquires, who am I? What is the purpose of life? Where am I going? So how are we going to get relief from this blazing fire? This is our main question. How am I going to be happy and get freedom from all of my distresses? How am I going to get unmitigated happiness? So the answer is found very much at the feet of Lord Nityananda. And why Lord Nityananda specifically? Because he's in a particularly merciful mood, just like Lord Chaitanya has taken up the mood of Radharani. So Lord Balaram, he's also taken up this very merciful mood. His mood matches that of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in addition, because he feels himself the servant of Lord Chaitanya, so it's even magnified. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's in the mood of his servant, Srimati Radharani, and Lord Nityananda, he takes this mood, not specifically of Radharani, but of his own consort, Purnamanda. And that is mixed with his natural mood of servitorship toward the Lord's friendship and servitorship, that he wants to facilitate the Lord. So what is the main thing that facilitates the Lord? The main thing that facilitates and pleases the Lord is when the suffering living entities come to real happiness. So such is the primary mood of Lord Nityananda, we could say, even more so than Lord Chaitanya. And therefore, whatever we are suffering, we're not going to get rid of it by taking some intoxicant. Since the beginning of time, human beings have tried to escape through intoxication, and sometimes they think that what they experience through intoxication is very spiritual. The whole hippie movement, that was the mood. If you smoke marijuana, if you take LSD, you'll get some sort of spiritual visions. It will augment your spiritual practice. And even in many religions, you know, the main religions of the world, Christianity uses wine in their religious ceremonies, as does Judaism. The Muslims don't use wine. They don't take any alcohol. But it's very common, this idea. I had one devotee posted a video the other day of these Orthodox Jews having their public dancing. I didn't say anything, but I was thinking, yeah, but they've all drunk alcohol first. You can't really compare that to the devotees on Sankirtan. So that doesn't really solve any problem, because intoxication is simply an extra layer of illusion. We're already intoxicated thinking we're this body. And so simply intoxication, it makes one sick, it makes one violent, it makes one more attached to this body and this world. And nowadays people have, of course, also electronic intoxicants, one could say. They actually do change one's body chemistry. People are playing video games and watching movies, at least temporarily. One thinks, oh, I have no material miseries anymore. But then after the show is finished, after the game is finished, one feels worse than before. It's like after the intoxicant wears off, one feels worse than before. So that doesn't give us relief. Intoxication doesn't give us relief. It compounds the problem. Or we think, well, I'm going to find relief by having a happy family and a good job, being a good person in society. But it's simply disappointment. The family members all disappoint us in one way or another. And looking for fame and fortune, name and fame, we will also feel disappointed. One day they praise you, like Frank Sinatra would sing. One day they're praising you, and the next day they're criticizing you. And you become the slave to the people who are praising you. And other people try to get free of the miseries of material life through just abnegating everything, running away from everything. Like the little child that you tell them, you spilled your juice on the floor, and instead of cleaning it up, they just scream and run away. That's just merging into the Brahman, just running away. And others try through becoming equipoise and balanced and detached from everything. I just won't care about anything. But the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, Nitya means eternal, Ananda means bliss. It gives us not some temporary, illusory, sensory pleasure, nor does it just negate everything. It gives us eternally the real happiness, and that's what mitigates the miseries. Now, this is quite an interesting statement of Srila Prabhupada, who purported this song. So Narottama Das Thakur is simply saying that if you don't have Lord Nityananda's shelter, you will not be able to worship Radha and Krishna. So the main essence of that is Krishna in Vrindavan is very soft. Of course, he also kills demons in Gokula Vrindavan in the material world, but his main mood in Vrindavan is very soft. He's there as a young cowherd boy, not more than 15 years old. And he doesn't really have a sense of being God, unlike, say, Ramachandra or Narayana. Vraja, yesterday was Vraja's appearance day, who very much has a sense of being God. I mean, that's a kind of pleasure. Just like most of us like to have a sense of being very powerful. We like to think of ourselves as invincible, right? I like to think, I'm not going to die. When we get in our car and drive around, I'm not going to get in an accident. I'm not going to get sick. That happens to other people, right? So we have a sense of power, and that's very pleasurable. But Krishna in Vrindavan, he's not in that mood. He's in the mood of being just the prince in a village of cowherds, right? When Krishna appeared on this planet, when he was in Dwarka, Mathura, the demons would insult him like that. Oh, you're just a cowherd. A village boy, and how he insults him. Oh, you're just a village boy. What do you know? Ignoramus. And Krishna doesn't even go to school until he goes to Mathura. So he's not in that mood of the supreme power. He's in a very soft mood, right? He's dancing with the young gopis. He's dancing at the request of Yasoda, Rohini, and the other motherly gopis. He's carrying Nandamarja's shoes on his head. He gets defeated when he wrestles with the cowherd boys. He has to carry the winner on his shoulders because he's been defeated. So he's very soft, and because Krishna is very soft, there are many protectors of the Dham. So we find Lord Shiva is a protector of the Dham, and also Lord Balaram, Lord Nityananda, he's protecting the Dham. That you can't get in, you can't enter into the Leelas if there's any chance you're going to hurt Krishna. Of course, as we say in this planet, when Krishna comes from a material planet, there are demons that enter that Krishna kills, because that's part of Vinashaya Chaduskritam. It's part of Krishna's mission in the material world. But in general, without passing through these gatekeepers, without passing through these guards, there's no question of just entering. You can't crash the party. But Srila Prabhupada says something even more astonishing in his purport to this section of the song. He says this Krishna consciousness movement is for approaching Radha Krishna to be associated with the Supreme Lord in his sublime pleasure dance. That is the aim of Krishna consciousness. So it sounds like the most obvious literal understanding of what Srila Prabhupada is saying here is that everyone in the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to join into the Ras Lila as one of the gopis. And as one of the gopis who dance in Ras Lila. Not all the gopis dance in Ras Lila. As you can see, even in this painting, you have some gopis on the side who are just playing instruments and so forth. There's different kinds of gopis, different moods. Some are more in the moods of being a servant and so forth. And you could say, well, does that mean that nobody's going to enter into the other moods? No, there's not going to be any other Staibab. No one's going to have, Vatsalya and Sakya and so forth. That, of course, would be absurd. Krishna doesn't want only Shringara Ras, Madhurya Ras. He's Akila Rasa Murti. He enjoys all of the rasas. He enjoys having the cows, and here we see the peacocks. But everyone is contributing to Krishna's rasa dance, if not directly, then indirectly. Those who are acting as Krishna's parents and friends, and even the antagonists, like Radharani's mother-in-law, Jatila, they're all contributing to this ultimate expression of love, of this Rasa Lila, which is really the ultimate activity of the Lord. I saw this when we were doing a drama at the Govardhan retreat, and I was playing Jatila, and I got a little fragment of insight by the grace of Giriraj and all of the wonderful Vaishnavas who were there, that even though Jatila in Yogamaya feels that she's hindering the relationship between Radha and Krishna, she's really facilitating it and making it ever sweeter and full of more adventure. And on some level, she's even aware of that. And on some level, she's taking pleasure in the relationship of Radha and Krishna, even as she's trying to impede it. So Dara is to hold. One is to hold the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, and not just fall at his feet one time, two times, but to become steady, nishta, to always be holding Lord Nityananda's lotus feet, always have this mood of dependence, that one doesn't enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, as we said, whether one enters directly or indirectly. I mean, in one sense, there's no such thing as directly or indirectly. It's all direct. But if one enters in the rasa of a gopi who's dancing with Krishna, or if one enters as a flower on the tree, or a garland of the gopis, or if one enters as one of the parents of the Krishna, or one of the parents of the gopis, in so many ways. But one has to catch hold of this lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. One has to always be under the shelter of Nityananda at all times, because we say he is the gatekeeper. If as soon as one loses his shelter, just like in places where people go to party, they have sometimes what they call bouncers, some big muscular guy that if you cause trouble, they pick you up and throw you out. So Lord Nityananda, he's one of the guardians, and one has to stay on his good side, not just that you take his shelter and he lets you in and you forget about him. You're not using him and then you kick him out of the way. But one has to have great devotion and love for the lotus feet of Nityananda. And as Prabhupada says that we are all, every one of us, he says, as living entity are searching after pleasure. Real pleasure is Nityananda, eternal pleasure. So this fact of our existence is one of the prime pillars of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. That not only is Krishna Anandamaya Vyasat, that he is always pleasure seeking, but so are each of us. So are each of us. And if we get disgusted with material pleasure, we might say, okay, I will simply live without pleasure. I know one devotee who thinks that anything she does that she enjoys must be wrong. She is trying not to take any happiness from anything. And then, of course, occasionally she complains, I'm not getting any happiness from it. But it's not possible for us to live without happiness. And I run into this misconception very often, that devotees will think, well, I'm only really surrendered if I don't enjoy my service. As soon as I'm enjoying my service, then it's just simply illusion. But such is really an impersonalistic philosophy. I mean, even the impersonalists are aiming for Brahmananda. They're aiming for a pleasure of being merged into the Brahman. So even they don't fully deny pleasure. But we are saying that the real pleasure is in loving relationships. The real pleasure certainly is not just in pleasing the senses. I mean, you've got a great meal and wonderful music and you're just sitting alone eating it. I know that's not nearly as pleasurable as when you're with friends or family, loving family. So the real thing we're craving is a loving relationship. And if we don't have that loving relationship with other humans, then we'll try to have it with animals. Sometimes we try to have it with our things, our paraphernalia. You know, somebody will love their car, or they'll love their gun, or they'll love their guitar. You see these musicians that before they start to play, they're practically caressing their guitar. So we want to love somebody. This is the real way that we get pleasure. And this love, it's above sense pleasure. Sense pleasure is really the antithesis of love. If I'm looking for sense pleasure, then I want to use objects and people to satisfy my senses. I don't want to love them. And it's also the antithesis of liberation, because love binds us to those whom we love, which is perhaps one of the reasons why people both desire and run away from love. But whenever we love someone, there's some bond there. There's some connection. It's the opposite of liberation. So these desires for bhukti and mukti, they will not give us eternal pleasure. In fact, they're considered to be like witches that haunt us and distort our intelligence. So if we want this real eternal pleasure, then we go to Nityananda, who exemplifies the perfection of loving relationships. So one could take this statement that if we haven't contacted Lord Nityananda, our life is wasted, as being very sectarian, because one could say that those who are in other religions, I mean, even those who are in the other Vaishnava Sampradayas, they don't appear to have sambandha. They don't appear to have a relationship with Lord Nityananda specifically. However, Lord Nityananda being the personality of Godhead and the Supreme Lord being one, there being only one God, anyone who contacts the Supreme Lord is certainly having a relationship with Lord Nityananda. We do not say, we've never said, and we should not say, that those who are contacting the Supreme through some other system cannot get free of the cycle of birth and death and are wasting their lives. Our purpose is not to get people, just hearing Prabhupada say this, our purpose is not to convert people from, Islam to Hinduism or something like that. Our purpose is to bring people to love of God. And Prabhupada was saying, he said, I've always said that in any bona fide religion, one can attain love of God. It's not necessary to change from one religion to another. I read something very interesting yesterday from a Mormon, and one of the big crises that's happening in the Mormon faith is that evidently the history of the founding of their movement is not told with very much fidelity to historical accuracy. So dates will be mixed up and so forth, and how Mormons are told that their movement started, that their religion started, is not verifiable with other historical records. And in some cases, it's a minor discrepancy, that the Mormons are taught that such and such happened in 1820, whereas actually it happened in 1822. But the fact that there's discrepancies, even on a minor level, have caused a lot of Mormons, once they're able to research via the internet, the article was about how access to the internet is harming the Mormon religion, that people often lose their faith in the religion altogether. And I was reading this because I teach ISKCON history, and I don't think there's very many people in the world who teach ISKCON history. And it's made me wonder, as I've thought about this before, that the fact that most people who join the Hare Krishna movement do not study ISKCON history, or they study some version of it just having to do when Prabhupada was on the planet and so forth, that if they come across people who present ISKCON history in another way, and it may have a negative effect on them. So therefore I was reading this, and the ex-Mormon who wrote this article was also bringing up something very interesting that I hadn't realized about the Mormon religion, that the Mormon religion relies very heavily on asking for guidance from the Holy Spirit within the heart as a means of verifying what one should do. And he gave the example that his sister was pregnant. The doctors had told his sister that the child had probably died in the womb. And this man decided he would ask the Holy Spirit whether or not the child was still alive. And so he prayed, is the child still alive? And he got some burning sensation in his heart, which he interpreted as meaning that the child was still alive. And of course, the child was dead. And after this experience, he thought, well, if I can't trust the Holy Spirit in my heart, maybe I can't trust my religion altogether. The point he made then is that, well, if the reason I'm a Mormon is I trust that the Holy Spirit tells me it's true, he said such verification happens in all religions, and he quoted from many different religious leaders in other religions who also talk about trusting guidance of the Lord in the heart as to whether or not that religion was true. And in fact, of course, we said the same thing. And he said, why would God tell each adherent in each different religion that their religion is true? He said that the whole thing doesn't make sense to me, so he rejected everything outright. But of course, he has a premise that only one religion can be teaching the truth. Whereas our premise is that each kind of religion has a different Desh Kalapatra, each kind of bona fide religion. Obviously, there's some just completely bogus, made-up, cheating religions. But that every kind of bona fide religion is designed for a certain mood of practitioners. It's designed for people who are from a certain part of the world, a certain culture, a certain place. And we find, of course, in the Vedas themselves, that there are all different sorts of religious prescriptions, not only one. I mean, even in the Bhagavad Gita, even in the Bhagavatam, there's instructions for Gyan, there's instructions for yoga, there's instructions for karma yoga, Gyan yoga, Dhyan yoga, not only bhakti. And that's, of course, talking about to come to the Lord. But in the Vedas, there's so many prescriptions for worshiping the demigods and going to heaven and so forth and so on. Now, of course, the Bhagavatam presents bhakti to the Supreme Lord Krishna as the highest. But still, these other paths are also available, right? We even have in the Bhagavatam Agnidra, who decided that he'd rather go to heaven and be with that Purvachita, whoever he was worshipping. So when we are saying you must contact Nityananda, this is not something sectarian. We're saying you must contact the Lord in his form of mercy, who is the personification of eternal pleasure. So here Narottama Das makes another very heavy statement, that one who doesn't have this sambandha with Nityananda, he's just pasu, he's just an animal, borrowed durachara. Everything is just miserable. What is the happiness to the animals? Just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So again, this should not be understood in some sectarian way, but what should be understood as a principle, as Prabhupada is saying here, a person without spiritual eternal happiness. If we don't have some spiritual happiness, what's left? What kind of happiness is left for us? Someone could say, well, we don't just have animal happiness, we have the happiness of music and art and culture and so forth. I mean, among the animals, not only do you see that there's an absence of religion, but there's also an absence of culture. And some animals construct some sort of home. And the spider builds its web, but it just builds, every breed of spider, each breed of spider builds a particular web. They don't have variety of architecture. I can have a home that has a very different architecture than your home. Right? And the animals, okay, they can make some music, but they can only make the music according to their species. I mean, some animals like a lyrebird and a parrot can make all different kinds of sounds, but only the humans can produce a variety of music. Philosophy. So one could say that no, the happiness in human life, it goes far beyond this eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But if we think clearly, we'll see that pretty much the art, the music, the culture, the philosophy, it's all about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The entertainment, the movies, the books, the TV shows, and so forth, plays, the dances, the rock music, the classical music. What is it about? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Mostly about mating and defending. Right? Isn't that mostly what it's about? Mating and defending. Sex and violence. In one form or another. Even the fairy tales told to children are basically about that. So it may be fancier than the animals, but the essence is the same. Without Lord Nityananda, all we have is false material happiness. We have this nice comic here done by my friend Madhava Priya. For those of you who can't see my screen, so it's children under a Christmas tree, and they're opening up boxes that says sense gratification and material happiness, and they say, oh boy, just what I wanted. And then as they're going through their present, they become envious. One of them says, I'm bored, his present looks good. The other one says, I'm tired of this stuff, I wish I had that stuff. And then they start fighting, give me this, give me that. And this is material happiness, like nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. It looks good at first, and we think, yes, this is what I want. And in time, we become disgusted, we become envious, we become disappointed. And even if you like your sense gratification, dukkhalayam shashvatam. Even if you say, I have the most wonderful sense gratification, I'm not disgusted with it. It's temporary. So Narottama Das Thakur is saying, if we don't say the name of Lord Nityananda, then all we're left with is this temporary happiness. We'll say, well, I have the protection of my family and my education. He says that these things won't save you. No matter how educated you are, there's still birth, death, old age, and disease. The highly educated scientists, they also get cancer. They also get car accidents. Even the people with the most wonderful family, their family members die. Their family members have so many difficulties, diseases. They still have to undergo everything in life. If that's the only alternative, is that what we really want? Instead of Lord Nityananda, will we give up the shelter of Lord Nityananda simply for family and knowledge? they won't help us. When we end this body, Prabhupada says, we'll just carry our work with us. All we'll carry is our karma. We may not even get a human body. You have a nice comic here of this man saying, I'm so accomplished, I'm a family man, I'm rich, I'm famous with a PhD, I own my own home. And at the time of death, it's his karma. In the next life, then he can be born in a low-caste class family. Right? Nobody cares about him. He doesn't get any honor. He doesn't get any prestige, and so forth. So all these things, they don't satisfy us in the present, and nor do they help us in our future life. They are just like a dream. Getting this material happiness is just like getting the happiness of a dream. So Prabhupada said, we may say, oh, I don't need Lord Nityananda. I have I'm powerful. And here we see the picture of Nityananda begging Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not to kill Jagai and Madai with his chakra. And how amazing that the Supreme Lord, I was just talking with a devotee yesterday about this, the Supreme Lord, who's unlimited in his glory, is coming and begging from the fallen conditioned souls who are constantly offending him and insulting him and rebelling against him. And he's begging them, please take the ecstasy of love of God. Please take the ecstasy of love of God. I mean, I don't need what you're giving. We don't understand who's giving it. We don't understand. Here's the Supreme Lord who has everything, who's offering to us. Like if you didn't know who Bill Gates was, you'd never seen his picture, you didn't know anything about him, and he comes up to you and says, hey, I'd like to give a donation to something. I'd like to give you a gift of some money for something you're interested in. And we just think he's some ordinary person, and we say, oh, wow, I don't need your money. We don't understand who we're talking to. So when Lord Nityananda, when he comes and says, I'm going to give you love of God only for the price of your faith. No, I don't need you. I can do everything myself. Ahankar. I am the controller. I am the most powerful. So if we reject Lord Nityananda, we're going to accept this false dream as the truth. When we're having a dream, it seems very real. We think this is really the truth. And similarly, if we reject Lord Nityananda, if we reject his offer of mercy and kindness, then we just become absorbed in the body and the day-to-day life in the world as if it was the reality. So this is a recurring theme in the song, that by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, we get the mercy of Radha Krishna. We get to enter, in other words, into the realm of Vrindavan. We get to go beyond this world, not just to the higher material planets of heaven or the great sages, not just to the subtle material coverings, which are the essence of all material enjoyment, not just to the Brahma Jyoti, which is ultimate relief, and not just to the Vaikunthas, where the Lord is there in majesty, but to Vrindavan, where the Lord is there in the ultimate sweetness as the sum total of all happiness. So here we have this Dado, again, to hold on tightly to Lord Nityananda's lotus feet. And in this painting, we see Lord Nityananda putting his lotus foot on the head of Raghunath Das. That's when Raghunath Das was going to do the chip rice festival on the bank of the Ganga. So if we're really serious, Prabhupada says, if one is actually serious, people often say, how do I measure my sincerity? How do I know if I'm sincere? And then we say, yes, I will serve you, Nityananda. Of course, Nityananda, Lord Balaram, they're the ultimate guru. So if you want to know, how do I practically do this? It has to do with obedience and surrender to the guru. here Narottama Das Thakur is assuring us, don't worry. These feet are eternal. In this world we take shelter of so many things, and either they disappoint us immediately, or if they don't last. We can't keep relying on them. At one point, they're not there anymore for us. My body's getting older, and my body as a shelter is becoming less and less viable. I can't see very well without glasses anymore, for example. So it used to be I could just see, just look at things and see them. And the body starts saying, no, I'm not going to be a shelter for you. And we may think Lord Nityananda will be like that. But no, his lotus feet are eternal. And the service that we do is also eternal. In this world, the service we do is very temporary. We do some service, and then the people for whom we do some service, they forget about it in 5 minutes, and they say, you didn't do it. Right? It doesn't last. We have to keep doing it. But in the spiritual, everything is eternal. Prabhupada, and his purport here says, anyone who takes to the service of Nityananda, they also become eternal. Without being eternal, nobody can serve the eternal. If you catch the lotus feet of Nityananda, then you become immediately spiritualized, just like if you touch electricity, immediately you become electrified. So his lotus feet give us this eternal hope, eternal happiness. That's what we're looking for. Such a simple thing in one sense. Give up the false ego and just have the shelter, not of our false ego, not of our money, not of our intelligence, not of our friends, family, our education, our country, so forth, but simply the shelter of the feet of Lord Nityananda, the most powerful. Then we become eternally happy. One of the most difficult things to admit is that materially, I'm not happy. Being separated from Krishna, being a rebellious soul, I'm not happy. I need spiritual life. I'm messed up. My life is messed up. I'm messed up. Without the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, I have nothing. Please, Lord Nityananda, give me the happiness of love and service. Just a little. Ainanda tanuja kinkara patitamam vishame bhavam bujo kripaya tapapad pankajasti tadui vichintaya. Just consider, please, make me give some little place somewhere, a little particle of dust somewhere. Then I'm safe. Then I'm secure. Then I'm situated in love. And from that perspective, I can really love. I can really serve. Otherwise, I'm just floating without shelter. So how do we get Lord Nityananda's shelter? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about this. He says that the marketplace of the holy name has now been opened, and Lord Nityananda himself is the proprietor in chief. And we go to the marketplace. Either we walk there, or we take a rickshaw, we take a car, or we turn on our computer and click on our mouse. We go to a marketplace. What do we buy? Toothbrushes or something. So here we buy the holy name. We can get the holy name. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that he's selling the pure, unadulterated holy name wholesale, merely for the price of one's face. So it's on sale. Wholesale. So wholesale is available for those who resell it themselves. So if you really want to get the holy name wholesale, then you distribute the holy name. And then all you have to have is faith. Unadulterated holy name. Shuddha. No. Not offensive holy name. Not chanting the holy name for some material thing. But Shuddha, pure name. And just that faith to give up, to maintain material attachments. Not have complete faith and not chanting of the holy name to maintain material attachments. So to have pure faith in the pure holy name, and then Lord Nityananda will give it to you. Bhaktivinoda says the very second that Nitai sees a tear welling in someone's eye upon chanting the name of Gaura, he instantly gives his support to that person. Indeed, he bestows all divine opulences upon him. So just a drop of affection, a drop of love, a drop of ecstasy in relationship to Lord Chaitanya, something small from our side, a little faith from our side, a little affection from our side. And the Lord Nityananda gives us everything. Bhaktivinoda continues to say, when offenses are vanquished, one will obtain the treasure of love of God. But in these names of Chaitanya and Nitai, there is no consideration of offenses. Once one has a taste for the holy name of Krishna, bondage to this world will come to an end. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, we just need some taste, we need some ruchi, and then our bondage is finished. And he says one can get this very easily by chanting Nitai Gaur. So one may say, well, why chant Hare Krishna? I'm chanting Hare Krishna with offenses. Let me just chant Nitai Gauranga without offenses. In fact, we know of one sannyasi who left Prabhupada's shelter, started his own movement, where on Japamala, he and his followers just chant the Panchatattva Mahamantra. But although the Panchatattva Mahamantra, the names of Nitai Gaur, there's no consideration of offense. It also, wouldn't it be offensive to disobey their instructions? The Lord Chaitanya's instructions are to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when there's attachment to the holy name of Krishna, then very easily the life of a living being becomes successful. At the end of life, one will obtain the beautiful vision of Radha and Shyam in Vrindavan. So it starts with some attachment, some taste, not just ritualistic formulas. So we may begin with something ritualistic, we may begin mechanically, but we need to come to the point, otherwise Shrama Evahi Kevalam, without Rati, one has to come to the point of attachment. I was speaking to a devotee yesterday who said, yes, I got some attachment for Krishna, but I thought, oh, well, I don't want to be a Sahajiya, so let me not have any attachment for Krishna. It was such a funny thing. He said, but I couldn't stop it. And so we want the kind of attachment that cannot be stopped. Rupa Goswami says, just like a young boy and a young girl, they're attached to each other. You can't stop it. It doesn't matter what rules you put in the society. It will still happen. So one should have an attachment to Krishna, hoitukiya pratiyata, that cannot be stopped. Bhaktivinoda says, the most merciful Lord Nityananda gives the holy name to anyone. He never cares in the least for one's position in relation to caste, material wealth, mundane knowledge, or physical ability. So, of course, this mood of Lord Nityananda is, or should be, one of the hallmarks of the Krishna consciousness movement. That we don't take some bodily, mental, positional situation as having any meaning whatsoever in terms of who can get and who can give the mercy of the Lord. So let us chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Nityananda ki